All right, everyone, you are listening to the Minding Mind podcast, where we live life with ease, connection, and permission to just be. I'm your host, Evelyn LeVasseur, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I am sitting down with Francesca Zoia, and let me tell you, we are going to talk all about overcoming conflict avoidance and speaking up in your relationships. Ladies, this one's for us. I can't wait for you to hear more. But before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about Francesca. She is a relationship coach specializing in empowering conflict avoidant women to enhance their communication skills and find fulfillment in their relationships. Having once internalized societal messages discouraging self-expression, she understands the struggle to voice needs and desires, leading to personal resentment. Through her journey, she's learned to overcome limiting beliefs and fears, inspiring her to empower women to confidently advocate for themselves. Beyond coaching, she enjoys painting by numbers, rollerblading, spending time with loved ones, watching Netflix, go Netflix, listening to podcasts, reading, and dancing. Welcome to the podcast, Francesca.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you for such a warm welcome and introduction.
No problem. So before we hop into this, because let me tell you, conflict avoidance is a big deal, a big deal. But before we get into that, why don't you tell me a little bit about you in your own words?
Yeah, so again, like you said, my name's Francesca. I'm a relationship coach, but more than that, I am just a woman that was formed and shaped by the society that I grew up in, by the family that I grew up in, the belief systems that I grew up in. And a lot of those belief systems, as much as the generation right above me really tried to teach me like self-confidence and self-worth and all of those things, it wasn't so much taught to them. So as much as they verbally tried to teach it to me, what they role modeled wasn't necessarily that self-worth, that self-confidence. And so, as you might know, we tend to just copy our parents more than we listen to what they say. And in copying a lot of those behaviors that I saw role modeled to me, I ended up with a massive conflict in my internal conflict in my 20s, which was I'm in this long-term relationship. I absolutely love and adore my boyfriend. I absolutely want to be with him and want to make this work. And at the same time, I feel disrespected. I feel unimportant. I don't feel prioritized. I don't feel seen. The list is long, and I don't feel like I trust that the relationship is good enough. I don't know if I should stay. I don't even know if I should go. I don't even know how to create the relationship that I want. I don't even know what kind of relationship I want because it just wasn't, I hadn't seen it. Like I just hadn't seen it. I didn't know what it looked like. So I start, working on myself, going to the therapy. I graduated as a therapist as well. So that was a big boost in my personal growth. And along the years, I learned so many things about just the fact that I really lacked boundaries. And we can talk about like what those are in case, just to define them a little bit better. But I really lacked boundaries. I had such a low self-esteem. I had such low self-worth. I had no idea how to speak up for myself. I was terrified of speaking up for myself, like absolutely so scared. And so obviously, my external world, meaning my relationship, was completely reflecting the way that I felt about myself internally. I didn't know that. I just thought it was all my boyfriend's fault and, he's the reason I'm unhappy and all that stuff. And as I started learning about myself, developing that awareness, taking responsibility for myself, and not that I was to blame, but just like being like, oh, there's these patterns and belief systems within me that really aren't serving me. And so when I started to understand that and work on that, I mean, I got really lucky. My boyfriend is wonderful. And whenever I set a boundary with him, he adapts to it, not at the beginning. There's always a little bit of resistance, but he really does. So we've been able to make our relationship continue growing and being as wonderful as it is. But it really had to start from me. I had to be the person to learn what are my needs? What do I believe I deserve? What do I think about myself? And then how do I transmit that to my partner? How do I share those things in a way that he can receive rather than just like making little snarky, resentful comments about what he hasn't done, which then ends up with him feeling like he's not good enough. He's retaliating, I'm retaliating, an argument has exploded, and neither one of us has resolved the actual topic at hand. That was a bit of a long-winded response, but that's a
No,
lot of
I feel like even if you think it's long-winded, I feel like all of it resonates, right? Like we all kind of, maybe not all of us, but we are raised with this idea of love being measured by how much we give to other people, especially as women. Like, you know, we are kind of taught, and I don't think that it's intentional, but we are taught that the true measure of love comes from our exhaustion and overwhelm. Like the more beat down and ignored you feel, the more right you feel in doing what you're doing, right? Like I'm exhausted. I don't have time for myself. I don't do anything for myself. And it's like, well, you know, that's motherhood or that's being in a relationship. And it's like, actually, no, it's not. Actually, no, it's not. That is a way to set yourself up for like resentment, a
Yeah.
lot of resentment from other people. And it always just continues to remind you that you're not worthy, that you're not enough, that your existence is dependent on, you know, validation from everyone outside of you. So first of all, kudos to you for being able to like go inward and recognize that this was something that you needed to handle for you instead of looking for the answer outside of you. But like, let's start there. What made you say, like, I know this is the only thing I've ever seen,
Mhm.
but something's got to be different?
Yeah, so I wish it was so like conscious and aware, like the way that you described it. It was totally unconscious. It was like, I'm in a lot of pain. I don't know what to do. Let me call a therapist. That was, where do I start? The person that I know can help me. And to be fully transparent with you, it wasn't this whole beautiful, like, I want to work on myself and I love, no, it was like, I literally got to the point where I was trying so hard to control my boyfriend and I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't able to. And you know the frustration that you feel when you're trying to control something and it just won't budge or won't happen, you know? The anger and the frustration and the anxiety and all that is really what led me to go to therapy. And it was over time that I then started to consciously and mindfully want to go inward. I spent years complaining in therapy, being like, my boyfriend should be the one in this chair. Why am I the one in this chair? He's the one mistreating me, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I love him to death. So if he hears this, he knows all of
Yeah.
this anyway. But, so I was really like stuck in that mentality of like, I'm the victim. I'm entitled to my resentment. Kind of like what you were saying earlier about so overworked, so overwhelmed. That was also, I mean, I made this connection literally like 2 weeks ago, but I wore that as a badge of honor. Like, look at everything that I'm doing for this person, and they don't even have the decency to like give me back a little bit. Like I was asking for like breadcrumbs here, like, and that was my badge of honor of like, look at me, look at how hard I worked and poor me. And I mean, I have no judgment towards people that are still maybe in that mentality because I get it. I hear you. I've been there. I also know that that served a purpose because I got a lot of attention through that. But the attention that I got through that kept me there. It didn't encourage me to grow or be better or do better.
Absolutely. I think too, there's that when you feel like you're being victimized, there's a part of you that has to recognize that the reality you're living in was created. Like
Mm,
you weren't just handed this life, you got there somehow, and you have to acknowledge your part in it.
yeah.
I only say that because I saw that for myself in the beginning of my marriage. I was 27 when I got married, and I really had it in my head that like you get married and then you're just happy forever. And then, you know, Jerry Maguire, you complete me. Your job is to make me happy, and my job is to make you happy. And it's like the lies that I carried in my heart. Like it was years and years later that I had to recognize that happiness is my job.
Mhm.
Like I love my husband. I love my husband. I'm still Evelyn when he's not here, right? Like I can't say I am Evelyn because of who he makes me. It has to be I am whole all the time. And I really enjoy his partnership. So yeah, there's like these ideas that you have in your head of what a relationship is supposed to look like. And it's a very superficial idea of what a relationship is supposed to look like. And then the things that don't fit in that box will throw you through a loop.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. And I don't know about you, but in my experience, it was like like same, like, he's supposed to make me happy and vice versa and whatever. But I had no clue what made me happy. So how is he supposed to magically figure out and know what makes me happy? And so what I find is that when partners have this belief system, what they're actually doing is the behaviors that they believe will make their partner happy are like the behaviors that they learned that in like society. Like they're like, oh, what makes a woman happy? What makes a man happy? And they just think, oh, okay, so that my boyfriend's a man. This is what makes men happy. This is what will make my man happy, or vice versa. And that's just not true. Like, I take my sister and I as an example. If you get me flowers, I am the happiest woman in the world. My sister will be happy if you get her flowers, but she also doesn't really love flowers because she doesn't love the idea of a plant being cut in order to be delivered.
Yeah.
So she's like, I'd rather you just get me an actual plant because I actually love taking care and nurturing a plant. So it's like you have to really get to know the person and get to know their needs and ask them. But I also need to know what I want, and I need to be able to articulate that to my partner in a way that they can like really in the specifics of it, in a way that they can understand.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think it's also like important to recognize that as you evolve in your relationship, the things that you want and desire evolve too. In the beginning of my marriage, I had this, like I said, that idea of like what marriage should look like. And yes, when he gave me cards and flowers, it was like, he loves me. I'm so important. He thinks of me when he's not here. And now, like, I'm perfectly happy with him, like in the middle of the day, just texting and saying, hey, how's your day going? Or, like if I have clients later at night and he is just cooking and cleaning and getting the girls ready for bed, like I feel loved when we're in partnership, right? When we're like giving and taking. So flowers, beautiful. Yeah, my daughters just bought me some flowers the other day. Super excited about that. But it's not the defining moments for
No.
me.
No,
Yeah.
and like as we age, our like you said, our priorities are so different. Like nowadays, yeah, those things are cute, but what is actually really helpful is when you communicate to me that you're gonna have a busy week so that we can organize who's gonna make dinner which night. That's sexy. Like that's like yes, because that gives me the awareness of what's going on, the freedom to organize myself. There's no random surprises that like cause problems and like unnecessary conflict.
Mhm.
It just completely changes it. But what I like, what I learned and what I hope to share with people is that in order to go with those changes that happen, you need to have certain tools and communication skills to like upgrade the contract, let's say, of the relationship every month, few years, whatever, day to day, if your priorities change, just being able to have that open communication with your partner and both partners obviously kind of need to be receptive to that so that you can, hear each other and make the changes that are necessary.
So I feel like you hit on two important points because I think that everybody talks about in a relationship, communication is important, right? Got it. Also, what does that look like?
Yeah.
People say it, your parents say it, your aunts say it. Nobody shows you what it looks like. What does effective communication look like in a marriage? What does the give and take look like? What does the compromise look like, right? So I feel like that is super important. We can't just keep going. It's like the idea of eating healthy is important, right? What does that look like for someone who spent their entire life being modeled unhealthy eating behaviors to take a simple statement like eating healthy is important? That's a really difficult thing to try to implement. So when we say communication is important, it is 100%. But how do we do that? Is my first question. And my second question is, I lied. I lost my second question. So let's go with that one first.
Let's go with that. We'll get back to it. But that's such a good question because I heard communication is key and I was like, but how?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm communicating. I was girl, I was over communicating. I was criticizing, I was attacking, I was blaming, I was accusing, but I was communicating,
Yeah.
right? So I like to start with what should not happen so that people can start to at least gain some awareness of like, oh, where's my role and responsibility in creating this conflict? So some of the things that like one time I was with a couple that I was working with and I was like, let's play a game. Raise your hand if you do this. And so I just started naming the things. Who yells during the argument? Who raises their voice? Who rolls their eyes when their partner shares something? Who blames their partner for what's happening? who denies their partner's like reality. So like gaslighting, right? So, when someone brings, I like to always define gaslighting because it took me a while to learn it. Just when you bring something up and someone's like, no, that didn't happen, that's gaslighting. So denial of my reality. Who gets up and leaves the conversation and says, I'm done with this? Like those are some of the things that I think are helpful to start understanding, like, where am I not contributing to the effectiveness of this relationship? And so it can seem so simple, but what needs to be done is let's find the right time and place to have this conversation. So, like, you know, if you're at your kid's basketball game, that's not a good time to have this conversation, for example. Hopefully, you have some privacy. Hopefully, you don't have other people around. Hopefully, you have like time. These things can take time. And when I say time, I mean maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, but that's okay. Like whatever time it takes, it's time that you're investing into your relationship. And then kind of basic things like just active eye contact, like you and I have right now, really like sitting and engaging with your partner. One of the things that I've told my partner many times is like for example, maybe when he gets upset, he starts to cross his arms and like kind of looks at me with this like challenging glare. And I'm like, no, no, no. If I need to share my vulnerabilities and open up to you, I need you to uncross your arms. I need you to sit in front of me. I need you to get at my level. I need to feel like you care about what I'm gonna say. And for me, that's like the active eye contact.
Mhm.
Those are just like a few little tips and tricks. But another big one is like I statements. And I'm sure you know what these are. I'm sure people see these all over social media, but it's like if you're not practicing I statements, you are probably wasting hours arguing with your partner. And or you're making little snappy, snarky remarks that really your partner's just defending themselves. So if you keep getting a response, a defensive response, you may need to evaluate what you're communicating. Because like I said, I was communicating and my partner was always getting defensive. And I was like, why does he keep getting defensive? Like, that's on him, you know? No, every word that came out of my mouth was a criticism.
Mhm.
So everything was disguised as like, I feel like you're doing this to me. Well, that's not an I statement. Like,
Right.
a true I statement is, I have this feeling when you do this behavior.
Mhm.
Plain and simple. There's no blame, there's no attack. I'm not accusing you of anything. I might even say, like, listen, I'm not sure if that's what you meant to do, but this is how I feel about it.
Yeah, I love that. I think another thing that I started practicing maybe a couple years ago, when I started to recognize that so much of our lessons growing up create like stories in our mind, and those stories become our reality. And that's something that I can communicate a little more clearly now because I recognize it so quickly. When my husband does, whatever behavior it is,
Mhm.
I will tell him, like, I usually start a conversation with, this is something I need to get off my chest. And it's
Mhm.
bothering me because when you did X, Y, and Z, it really brought up this story in my mind. And I know that story is my responsibility, but I need to let you know that the behavior really hurt me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I recognize that it is my job to address whatever is popping up in my mind, right? Whatever hurt I'm feeling, and figure out where does it come from, and what is it that I'm not getting? What do I need? Right.
Yeah.
So that I can communicate that. But I also don't take responsibility for his actions. Right. And I know that no matter what, I approach him with compassion because he is a great human being. And I know that when he does things that bother me, it's never with intention, right? It's never with the intention to hurt me. So if I can always address things that way, it doesn't deny the fact that I'm hurt, but I don't have to attack him for it. And
Yes.
I used to, say like, you're being selfish, or, the name calling, and you're being inconsiderate, and all the other things that flew out of my mouth. But now I recognize, like, the way I feel is my responsibility. This thing that you did made this story come up in my mind. So this is what I'm feeling right now. And I certainly plan to address it, but also the behavior hurt me. And I
Yeah.
need to do that.
Yeah. I love that you're able to hold both your responsibility for your own emotion and also accountability for the other person. And the thing is that, and I love how you described it too, because the accountability that you're talking about comes with so much compassion, which is so important because in any time that you're called out for something that you did, it's gonna sting. Like even if you have like a really high self-esteem and you're super secure in yourself, like it's still gonna sting. And if your partner, maybe you don't even know that they do, but if they deal with any sort of shame or guilt and like really fall into that spiral, anytime that you call them out on something and they kind of fall into that, it's not that it's your responsibility because it's not, but your delivery can be more compassionate and kind. I think the issue is, I thought of two things while you were sharing. One is that the people that I tend to work with, or even like where I was coming from, I had so much resentment built up because of so many years of not saying anything that when my partner would do something, like you said, those stories, I was so locked in those stories that there was no way for me to believe that he had good intentions with what he was doing. Because
Mhm.
all I could see was the behavior. And so I would automatically assume if this was the behavior and it hurt me, then he wanted to hurt me. Then
Yep.
he doesn't care. And that's the story, right?
Yep.
And so that kind of ties into the second thing, like a silly example, but when we moved in together about a year and a half ago, when we first moved in together, maybe in the morning he would like go and like make his coffee. I had never asked him to also make me a cup of tea. Like I'd never made that request. But I'm here thinking like, wow, he's not even gonna offer me to make me a cup of tea as well because he knows I like tea, or at least put the water to boil. And then the whole story starts. Wow, he really doesn't care about me. Look at everything that I do for him. I always think about him when I do stuff, blah, 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 blah. The second I started saying, "Hey babe, can you just like put the water to boil?" Now he goes and makes a cup of coffee and he's like, "Oh, do you want some water? Do you need some water to boil as well?"
Mhm.
And so it's really it can sometimes it can be really lengthy interpersonal work when it comes to this stuff, I'm sure you know, because it takes time to undo those stories and to get to know them and develop the awareness around them and really realize that it's our stuff
Mhm.
instead of putting it on our partner. And then once you kind of do that work, then you have to build the skills of like communicating and explicitly asking for something, even though it feels uncomfortable. Like at first, I hated having to ask. I was like,
Yeah.
he should just know.
You
He knows
should.
me. He loves me. He should just know. And
Yep.
my therapist was like, Francesca, stop making people read your mind.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't work.
Yeah. I think even the idea like that he should know is like something that because we make it our job to we think we know what everybody wants and needs. But really, then if you really start breaking all that down, then you look at all the things that you do for your partner because you think you know what he needs. And really, you're providing for him what would make you feel good, but you ultimately don't know what he needs because you didn't even ask. You just give, 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 give. And it's like, what of these things that I am like killing myself to give are even what he wants and needs? Like, did I take the time to learn what he wants as an individual as much as I took the time to learn what I want as an individual? Like, did I take that time? And for me, I hadn't. I
Yeah.
had not.
Yeah. I love
I
that
just
you,
remembered my second question. My
yeah.
second question was when you recognize that you have this work to do on yourself and you recognize that there's a lot for you to unpack, how do you begin to bring your partner into that conversation? Because you know that the work is yours, but you also know that however you change internally is going to change the dynamic of your relationship. So, how do you bridge that?
That's such a good question. I haven't thought about this in a while.
Mhm.
But yes, I think first off, just know it's going to be messy.
Mhm.
It's going to be so messy because you're still learning. You are still kind of confused. You're still understanding what's yours, what's not yours. You're like totally shifting your way of thinking. And so as you communicate what you're experiencing to your partner, they may not understand. They may not be on board. They may not enjoy the things that you tell them, you know? And I think learning from my mistakes on how I did it, the best way that I would recommend to do it is like, listen, is give someone a heads up. Like even this isn't just all of this stuff, right? Like we're talking a lot about your partner because, you know, that makes sense, but it also applies to the other relationships in your life. Like the women that I work with, they have this issue in all the other relationships in their lives. That's why I'm like, girl, it needs to start with you because you are the common denominator in this pattern. And that's a hard pill to swallow. I had to swallow that pill. It was not fun, but it is liberating because once you know that it starts with you, then you have control over it. You're no longer a victim of these dynamics and situations. Anyway, so let's give a heads up to the people in your life, like, hey, I'm working on myself. I'm gonna be, doing all this work, whether it's therapy or coaching or healing, whatever it is. And I this is what I want to get to. Like maybe you say, I want to get to a point in our relationship where we can get along, where we can agree on things, where we can work together towards stuff. And set that intention for what you're going to be bringing to them. But other than that is really just like a big part of this work is also the women that I work with, as they start to learn to speak up for themselves, part of it is also evaluating whether or not your partner is open and willing to the change that you're creating in the relationship. And so as much as you can, and I say this because like I think it's an important disclaimer, is like as much as you can set an intention for your partner, set an intention for the work that you're doing, you also need to be aware that sometimes your partner may not be on board and may never get on board with every change, with the changes that you're making. And sometimes and not just your partner, other people in your life. And sometimes you're going to outgrow relationships because those relationships were benefiting from you being an overgiver and an overpleaser and really poor boundaries. They were really benefiting from that. So in a sense, it's like more than just how do you bring your partner in, which is such a beautiful question, is also like, let's get a whole community of support around you because this is hard work. And if you have an amazing partner that is on board and supports you and everything, beautiful. If you don't, you're going to need that community of people to keep you going and keep you pushing forward because the resistance that you might get from your partner can be so strong. It can make you question everything that you're doing and it can send you back. Like 3 steps forward, 5 steps back.
Yeah.
You need that support system of people that are unbiased
Yeah.
in this situation.
Oh my gosh, I 100% agree. I think that what you're bringing up to me when I'm hearing this is it took me a very long time to finally recognize that I loved so deeply. I had that love for everyone else, but I didn't have it for me. Right. So when the time came that I finally started to look at myself like, oh my, I love you. Like I love you. I look at myself now and I'm just like, I love all of you. Like I love your heart and I love your loyalty and I love your mind and I love the way you show up for people, but I love the way you love you, right? I think I recognized for maybe the first time in my life that the conversations may be uncomfortable. The difficulty in a marriage can be very stressful, but I will never again live in betrayal to myself. So if that means choosing me, then I will choose me above all else. I'm the one person that I have to be with 24 hours a day. Why wouldn't I take the best care of her? Right. It's God, that's such a big deal. It's like to finally recognize that no discomfort I can get in a relationship is bigger than the discomfort I felt by not being comfortable with myself. Like you carry that all day, every day. Every time you open your mouth, the lack of love you have for yourself is evident. And I'm only saying that because I'm speaking from experience. The other thing that came up for me is in recognizing that I do believe that a lot of people benefit from you not having boundaries. But I do believe also that there are people who genuinely do want what's best for you, and they may resist your changes. And a part of me says that that's a place where I get to express more compassion also, because in my change, they're experiencing a loss of a relationship that they used to have with me, right? So maybe they're working toward accepting the new me, but I have to let them process the grief of losing the old me. So I try to look at it two ways while also still maintaining boundaries. Like I respect that this is your experience, but also like this is who I am, right? Like it's got to be both.
Yeah. And I don't wish for anyone to be at that crossroads, kind of like what you were talking about, like choosing me,
Yeah.
choosing a relationship. I don't wish that upon anyone. It's not a fun place to be in because either way, it's loss.
Mhm.
Either way, it's like, oh, okay, I have to choose me, but that means losing this person. That means the world to me. Like, what? Or possibly losing this person because we don't know, right? Every time we set a boundary, it's a huge risk. We might lose them, we might not, we don't know. And I think the hard part is in initially just doing it and facing the fear of potentially losing them, because that's what we're terrified about. If we have any abandonment wounds or rejection wounds, it brings up all that stuff. But like you said, there's nothing more powerful than choosing to no longer betray yourself.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, one of the big things that I've realized is it's like, okay, whether or not your partner or your family is treating you in a certain way, the only thing that you can control is to not betray yourself. And it's in betraying yourself that you create a lot of that resentment. I'm not saying that it's your fault, just to clarify for anyone that's
Yeah.
listening. But and we that is how our brain works, and it is how these dynamics work inside of us.
Yeah. I think that idea of choosing yourself, I feel like what keeps me feeling so strong in my marriage is that I wholeheartedly expect my husband to love himself. I wholeheartedly expect myself to continue to love myself, right? And to continuously choose our own, like ourselves, our individual selves, so that we show up for each other better. But I also live with this incredible sense of faith that, and I'm not talking about just faith like the faith we were taught in religion, because that's a whole other podcast episode, okay? But this faith of knowing that what is for me will be for me. So no matter what the outcome, I'm going to be okay,
Yeah.
right? I'm going to be okay. But I also believe that my husband and I, like, I feel like our souls are connected, right? And it is my ultimate responsibility to care for my soul in a way that can best show up for his. So when I say I will choose me, like if push came to shove and I had to go that route, then I would. But I walk every day knowing that when I make choices for myself, it makes me a better human for him too. So I just feel like that's the faith part of it, and knowing that I don't have to walk on eggshells in my life thinking, is he going to leave? Is he going to leave? Is he going to leave? It's like I get to be just me and love just me without like conditions. I just get to be me, and he gets to just be him, and then come together better because of that. So I feel like there's boundaries, there's compassion, there's growth and self-reflection, but there's also like a lot of faith that you're walking on, and that faith has to be stronger than fear.
That's really beautiful because, yeah, that faith. I mean, I love everything that you've said so far. And I'm also thinking, I think it's that faith that also allows us to face the fear of losing something because, and also in a sense, when you face the fear of losing something, it's terrifying. Don't get me wrong. Like it's horrible. Like it's not fun. That's why you have your support system for
Mhm.
those moments. But when you face that and you are brave enough to go there and you let the cards fall in the way that they need to fall, then what stays, what comes back, or what comes into your life, what you attract that's new into your life, you know that you are wanted, you know that you are loved, you know that the people that are there truly, truly want to be with you. And as someone who has work through a lot of abandonment issues, rejection, like fear of rejection, all that stuff, which a lot of us have. When you let the cards fall and the people that stay in your life want to be there, it just naturally starts to heal that whole abandonment wound and fear of rejection because you can trust that those people want to be there because you're no longer controlling, you're no longer manipulating, you're no longer walking on eggshells, you're no longer like people pleasing to try and keep them there. It's just like, oh, you're here because you want to be here. Oh, you actually love me. Oh, you actually care about me. Oh, I'm actually worthy of having these relationships. And it just heals.
I think that when you were talking earlier about in the beginning stages of your relationship, how much you were trying to control your boyfriend, I feel like that is the thing that we all learn the most is that you cannot have trust and control.
No.
It's one or the other. And letting go of that control is hard, especially when we're trying to use that control to prove that we're worthy of the things that we want. Because releasing that control kind of feels like you're saying, then I'm not worthy of it. But you're actually saying the opposite. I think I learned now that I don't feel afraid to do things differently. I don't feel afraid to tackle the hard things. I feel a little powerful in saying that every time I choose to do things differently, or every time I choose to have a real difficult ass conversation, I'm creating my reality a little more the way I want it. Like everything in my life, I co-created it,
Mhm.
right? Like nothing got handed to me. I'm not a victim. I'm not like, this is the life that I wanted, and I did the things to make it happen. And when I say the things, I mean internally.
Yeah. Yeah,
Internal.
of course. Yeah. And I also just want to extend like so much compassion to people that are still in that initial phase that I was describing in my relationship, because one of the things that I've realized is that it's really easy to judge someone in that position. Oh my God, is it easy to judge someone that's doing that? But the thing is that most people that are in that position are so unaware of what they're doing. If you would have told me that I was controlling my boyfriend, I would have been the first person to be like, no way, I love him. I respect, like,
Mhm.
yes. But there was all unconscious mechanisms that I had no idea that I was doing. And so I think a big part of this work, and you brought it up a few times, is that compassion, not just for your partner, but also for yourself along the way. You're going to make so many mistakes. Like, we all do. You're going to make so many mistakes. You're going to like set a boundary and then go back on it and then set it again and then go back on it and just make a mess of the whole situation. You're going to learn all the skills and tools. Maybe you're going to listen to this podcast and another 5 episodes and be like, okay, I know what to do. And then you're going to try and do it. And the fear is just going to take over your body and you're not going to be able to set the boundary that you had prepared for yourself. You're going to make so many mistakes, but it's because you are literally undoing not just your own many years of pattern, but like we were speaking earlier before we got on this call, is like the generational patterns.
Mhm.
Because all of these behaviors that I had, I inherited, I learned, they were role modeled to me. You see them all over. Hundreds and thousands of women in society have this. Most of my clients are international now. So you can't say these things are just in the US or just in South America. Girl, it's everywhere.
Mhm.
And so it's really breaking those like societal norms, those generational norms, and creating something new. And sometimes you don't know what direction you're going in. You just take 3 steps forward and you're like, okay, let's see if this works. My
Yeah.
coach told me to set this boundary. Let's see what happens.
Mhm. I think that is like one thing to recognize is that in the journey, right? It's not like you have this awakening, like I get to create this life. I get to set boundaries. I get to bring my partner on board. I've got the formula. We're good. It's literally learning and unlearning. And like you said, 2 steps forward and 3 steps backward. But the fact is that you never have to be stagnant again. Like you're fully aware that whatever change you want is within reach. And the truth is, like, it's not like you get to a point where you're just like healed and it's over. Every
No.
time you unpack something and work through it and you feel so damn good to just be you, something else pops up that's like, well, shit, I got to work on this too, right? Like it's a constant evolution of you,
Yes.
right? But like, I don't know. I guess I just love to look at it as I have been on at all the damn stages. And I guess I'm just excited to uncover what's next, right? Like I'm excited for if I can see in, let's say, 10 years, in the last 10 years, I'm a dramatically different human being, dramatically different. I am excited for Evelyn 10 years from now. Like I'm excited. Girl, I am happy to meet you. I'm excited to meet you 10 years from now. So like the change is scary, but it's also beautiful.
Well, because I think once you've been through enough of those, the ups and downs of the changes, like, you go through the loss and then it gets better. And then, when you've been through it enough times, when you're at that, when there's a hard situation in front of you, I think now I'm able to look at it and I get to have like a meta perspective of it where I'm like, okay, this is horrible. I absolutely hate this, and I'm valid in feeling that. And I know that if I use what I know to walk across this fire, I know that there's going to be growth, there's going to be healing, there's going to be better afterwards. And once you do it enough time, there's that trust in the process.
I love that. I think that one thing I used to struggle with was feeling like everything that I had to tackle mentally and emotionally was going to be the end of my relationship. Like, oh, now it's going to be over. Now it's going to be, there's a part of you that's thinking like, I'm going to destroy us because I'm changing me.
Yeah,
That was a fear that I held for real.
I think a lot of people do. And I think that's where there's so much courage in, like what you were saying earlier, of having faith that what's mine will stay in my life or will be in my life, is that that's the fear because you put yourself out there. Like even just in being vulnerable and in sharing something with your partner of like, hey, when you do this thing, it really upsets me because of X, Y, and Z. That's a freaking vulnerable place to be in. Like, I just want to normalize how uncomfortable that is, the sweating that happens, like the butterflies in the stomach that happens, like your throat just blocks and you're like trying to get these words out. It's really terrifying. But again, if you have that faith that you were talking about, you're able to have the courage to feel the fear. Sounds so cheesy, but it's so true. Like you feel the fear, you do it anyway, because you know what, at the end of the day, like if I have to, it's like making that decision of like, if I have to choose being in this relationship out of fear that I'll destroy it, or choose standing up for myself out of love and respect for myself, there's only really one
Yeah.
solution there.
Yeah, 100%. So I guess I will ask you, if someone is like just starting out in this journey and they are very much like conflict avoidant, very
Yeah.
much people pleasing, but they're recognizing, right? They're recognizing that they want something to be different. How would you guide them to start? Like what's a good place to start making some baby steps toward being able to speak up for yourself or being able to, stop avoiding so much?
Yeah, I think number one is get community, get support, get people around you, whether it's professionals or if you have friends, like if you have that best friend of yours that's like so strong, so empowered, like hang out with her. Like she's gonna give you the support that you need. If you know of a coach or therapist that speaks to these issues that can really support you, either someone who's been through it or someone that specializes in this, get that support. Like invest in yourself, whatever you can. Obviously, we're in an economic recession right now, so that's not great. But whatever support you can access, whether it's free podcast or like a community membership, whatever it is. But I think really get that support because when you start doing this work, it can bring up a lot of feelings. It can be really challenging. If you've been through any like seriously like traumatic incidences, which also can lead to conflict avoidance, it can bring up all that stuff. So you're going to want to have people around you that can kind of hold you when you're not able to, when you need to fall apart. Because there's going to be times where you need to fall apart.
100%. 100%. I love this conversation is so powerful because I feel like we're all kind of taught to seek out relationships, but we're not really taught how to be in them. So I love that like you're kind of bridging the gap on that for so many women that have like the same kind of programming. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So is there somewhere or where can people find you if they want to like follow you on social, website, programs? Like how can people work with you or talk to you, reach out with you?
Yeah, so actually, coincidentally, where I realized I wanted to help women is in creating that community. Because what I would have wanted when I was going through all this was knowing that other people had the same issues that I had, because I had a lot of shame around it. So I've created a community, a very low cost, very easy access community of women. It's like a monthly subscription service, but it's just, support for people that are going through this. So you can find me on Instagram. It's Love with Francesca. That's the main place to find me. So I'll just drop that as my handle.
Awesome. And it'll be in the show notes too. Beautiful. So before I let you go, I have to ask you the difficult question, right?
Okay.
The difficult
I'm
question
ready.
is, in the Minding Mind community, we believe all in going deep on the inner work, getting real intuitive and following those gut instincts, silencing the outside noise, society's expectations, everyone's expectations, except your own. And that's
Yeah.
what I call minding mind. So how do you feel that minding yours, learning to listen to your own instinct, how do you feel that changes the legacy that you will leave?
That's such a great question. The reason I'm sitting here with you right now is because I minded mine, is because I had a list of what my career needed to be and the path that I needed to take and the type of work that I needed to do. And when I got to a place where I truly understood everything that I explained to you today and was able to articulate it, I realized that this is going to sound a little woo-woo spiritual for anyone that's listening and isn't really on that, whatever. But I realized that God, higher power, whoever's out there, gave me hard situations to go to and also gave me resources to overcome them for a reason. Higher power made me talkative as hell. And so they were like, here, you need to spread this message. You are given these hardships, you are given these resources, you are given these gifts so that you can go out there and talk about this stuff and speak to not just women, but also women from different nationalities, women from different cultures, because there's such a huge cultural impact in everything that we're talking about that we didn't even get into, but I'm sure we would bond over them.
Yeah.
And it's really just like creating what what I'm trying to do now is creating exactly what I wish I would have had when I was going through all of this. And so what I'm hoping is that what I create really resonates with people and is in service and supportive to them as they go on their, empowerment, healing journey and everything.
I love it. I love it. I feel like everything that you just described is just describing the fact that we are all born with purpose, right? And the gifts that you have 100% are for you, but they're not about you, right? Like the things that you do are about how you impact other people. So I absolutely love that. All right, guys, this was a good one. I'm going to just close this out here. Thank you guys so much for joining us today, Francesca. This conversation was amazing, and I feel like we're probably going to have to do it again. So if this episode resonated with you, make sure to comment, rate, and review the podcast. Your feedback helps me grow. And until next time, go live your life on your terms, and please mind your business. Catch you in the next episode.